And the reason that he was killed is because he got involved with John Gotti from the Gambino family. John Gotti was paranoid. John Gotti thought he was cooperating. The reason that he thought he was cooperating was because Fred Weiss, who was arrested in June of '89, switched lawyers. That's the only reason why he thought he was cooperating. So this man got killed for nothing. Horrible. Now, that murder, years later, becomes probably the most indictable mob murder ever, where at least 15 people from two different families, the Gambinos, the Cavalcantis, have either pled guilty or were convicted of that murder. Wow. Unbelievable. So Fred Weiss should have never gotten involved with John, and John Gotti should have never gotten involved with Fred Weiss.
I'm Steve Murphy, DEA Special Agent retired and now host of the Game of Crimes podcast. If you've seen the Netflix series Narcos, then you know my story. I now bring you stories of heroism and bravery from our law enforcement and military heroes, and occasionally from the criminals that they faced. Welcome to Game of Crimes. Hey, gang, here we go again. The new episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the morning. Just like we always do, got another fantastic guest for you here today. Somebody that has the most Irish name I've ever heard in my life. And I think you'll agree with me after we get to that part. But just want to say thank you for continuing to come back every week, supporting the show, supporting me. If you don't know, Game of Crimes has a Patreon subscriber channel. Just go over to patreon.com/Game of Crimes. A lot of stupid stuff. I mean, really important stuff goes on over there. So come over and check us out. And you can actually join for free and hear the first 5 minutes of every episode that we put out every month. And there's a ton of stuff going on over there. So come over and check it out. But anyway, back to today's guest. This gentleman is a 21-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a special agent. Talks a little funny because he's from the North. He doesn't talk real English like Murph does, the redneck hillbilly stuff. His parents actually immigrated from Ireland. Now, we think in our family with the Murphy name, we think we're Irish. We can't prove it because of loss of records. My daughter-in-law has researched our name, and she thinks we're Scottish instead of Irish. Doesn't matter. I know that my grandmother on my mom's side immigrated from England, so we've got the connection over to the UK, at least on one side of the family, but probably both. But today's guest, his name is Seamus McElearney. Have you ever heard a more Irish name? And I love it. I mean, I love it. I may have met one person in my life named Seamus, but man, that's a cool name, right? I love it. So Seamus, brother, thank you so much for taking the time to come on Game of Crimes.
It's great to be here, Steve.
I hope you feel like that when it's over. And one thing I forgot to mention to you, he's an author. He's got his own book out now. It's called Flipping Capo, How the FBI Took Down the Real Sopranos. And I probably didn't say that exactly right, but we're going to cover that more as we go through the interview. You all know the Sopranos, right? Well, this is a man that led the group that took these people down. And Seamus, I got to tell you right off the bat, we've had several guests on here on Game of Crimes that were involved in that investigation. And I'm curious if you know any of their names, because the three that have been guests on here worked undercover on the case at one point or another. The first is a fellow FBI agent named Rob D'Amico.
I've heard the name, but I don't think it's related to this case, though.
Okay. He did something on it, I think early on in his career, where he was on episode 226, which is just several weeks ago, but he was providing security for one of the captains on one of their boats. And,
okay.
And apparently the boat was already wired with video and audio. I think somebody had done a black bag job on it.
Okay.
So he was on here. We had another gentleman who was a Jersey local cop, Giovanni Rocco.
Yes. That's a case that took place years after this case, which we can get into that as well, because that took place, I think, about in 2016. This took place from 1999 up until 2004 or 5.
Wow. Yeah, Giovanni was, and there's another cool name, Giovanni Rocco. I mean, that name, just like, you're going to get your ass whooped. He was episode 161. And then while he was doing some undercover in Vegas with some of the DeCavalcanti associates or whatever they were, he brought in another undercover named Dutch McAlpin.
Okay. That I have not heard that name, but his main target in his case is a guy named Charles Stango, who actually was part of our case as well.
Yep. Now that you mentioned it, that name does sound familiar. And I think Dutch came in as the hitman. He was on episode 223 here just a few months ago. He was a cop in Missouri. He's retired now also. But I'd never heard of the DeCavalcantes, to be honest with you, till I talked to Giovanni. And now you're the fourth guest here on the Game of Crimes that's talking about the DeCavalcante. I couldn't even say DeCavalcante when I first talked to Giovanni.
Yep, they are known as the Sixth Family.
Wow. So anyway, it's welcome to the show, man. I'm so excited. I have read Seamus's book here. If you want to know what it takes to infiltrate a family like that and deal with the BS that goes along with it, primarily dealing with cooperating witnesses, and we'll get into more detail. I don't want to get too far into it right now. This is the book you want to read, though. I mean, you did an excellent job of detailing it. I don't know how you had a memory like that. I don't know if you made that crap up or you really couldn't remember it. But, I mean, just really, really good detail, almost on a daily basis as to how this thing developed. But you heard the years that he was involved with it. So he's stationed in New York on 9/11, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as well.
Exactly.
So, as I usually do with our guests, I waited till about an hour ago before we started recording, and I sent Seamus an email, and I said, hey, I got this section called Small Town Police Blotter. It's about stupid criminals. Would you read a story? It took him about a minute and a half to respond. I said, I'm in. I'll do this. So, Seamus, if you would, brother, before we do, and just to read a disclaimer, this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. We take the stories very seriously here, as we always do, but we never want to miss that opportunity to have the good laugh at the antics that some of these people who think they're criminals pull. And like I've said before, they probably should find a different career because they're not doing real good at what they're doing now.
Exactly.
All right, Seamus, you're up, brother. Right. Go ahead.
Okay. One tough judge. A party in October ended with a legal aid lawyer lying unconscious on a New York City sidewalk. And on Tuesday, a state parole judge who handles Rikers Island cases was charged with misdemeanor assault and harassment in the case. Robert Beltrani, 53, was said to be at the same party as attorney Sam Roberts, 48, and allegedly intoxicated Beltrani reportedly said some inflammatory words to Roberts just after 11:30 that night as they stood outside the venue. Yeah, I'm the judge, Beltrani said, per the complaint against him. I do justice and I kill people.
What a judge.
This comes from the judge, folks. Beltrani then allegedly sucker punched Roberts as he tried to walk away, then fell on top of him on the sidewalk. Roberts was knocked out and suffered a separated shoulder, a black eye, and other injuries. He said that Beltrani just didn't seem to like him after they were introduced, and he tried to disengage and may have been impolite to Beltrani, and at that one point, the judge warned him, "Don't disrespect me. Watch out." Beltrani showed up in court with a quarter-sized lump on his forehead. He left the courtroom without comment, mumbling profanities under his breath. He was released without bail. Roberts received an order of protection against Beltrani. Can't make this stuff up.
You're not kidding, man. It's funny you say that because one of the monthly episodes I have on our Patreon channel is You Can't Make This Crap Up. It's an hour long. It's an hour of stupid criminal stories.
Now, if you recall what I just read there, it said that the state patrol judge Beltrani handles Rikers Island cases. So obviously this judge had seen way too many defendants from Rikers Island in front of him. And man, in that quick time period that you sent me this, I looked it up real quickly. He's no longer a judge.
Not surprising, is it?
Yeah. Unreal. But
man, oh man. That's
now, I'm kind of curious if the guy Roberts ever sued him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And honestly, that was a little bit of an old story. It happened quite a few years ago. But still, I'm just thinking, man, I met in federal court in New York, I met federal judge Sterling Johnson. I don't know if you remember him.
Great man from the Eastern District. Great man.
Loved him. No nonsense. And he was one of the toughest judges I'd ever seen. And now you hear about this guy.
Straight shooter. Yeah.
Thanks for reading that, man. So everybody knows I'm here in Florida, and there's never a shortage of idiots here in Florida. So today we got a Florida man was hit with federal charges, not state charges, but federal charges after he allegedly, which you folks know I hate that word, he stole $7,000 in scratch-off lottery tickets from a convenience store. And then he returned to the scene of the crime just a few hours later to try to redeem those, to check them, to turn them in for the ones he'd won. So this guy's name is Justin Farley. He's 43 years old. He pulled into St. Petersburg, a Circle K over there. And I don't know why, but it seems like the majority of the dumb criminals live in the St. Pete, Tampa, Clearwater area. I don't know what's going on there. It's like an idiot magnet.
You can't fix stupid, right?
You're exactly right. And you probably have, but I've got a ton of retired police officer friends in Tampa. So anyway, Farley, he goes inside. He opened up multiple cabinets in the Circle K. He took a bunch of the scratch-off lottery tickets, and then he fled the scene in his gray Hyundai Elantra. I don't know why it's important, but about 40 minutes later is when he tried to go to a 7-Eleven the first time to redeem $7,000 worth of scratch-off tickets. Of course, that was unsuccessful. So the bumbling thief, he returned back to the Circle K where he committed the first crime, and he tried to cash them in. Of course, that didn't work either. So he went back one more time. The third time, it still didn't work. So he thought, well, I'm going to try something different this time. So he goes back to that 7-Eleven. He puts on a black mask. He's got a bright yellow shirt on and his black Nikes. I saw a picture of it from the cameras in the store. And he used a replica Glock, pointed it at the clerk, and demanded that the employee open the cash register. He got all the cash there, a total of $120. They say we all have a price. Nobody's ever gotten to my price yet, which is probably in the $1 billion range, not the million, $120. And then he escorts the clerk to the back of the store. Oh, and he also stole a pack of Newport cigarettes, because that's really important. So a slew of evidence, including his license plate and surveillance footage, led cops to arrest Farley several days later on a commercial burglary and grand theft. After his arrest, he admitted committing the theft and robbery, and he told the cops that he just needed some money. Well, we all need money at times, but I don't go stick a gun in somebody's face.
It's going to cost him a lot more than $7,000, that's for sure.
You're not kidding. Farley was indicted by a Tampa federal grand jury for one count of, you may have heard this because you've worked fraud before, one count of interference with commerce by threat or violence, a federal charge under the Hobbs Act, which prohibits robbery that affects interstate or foreign commerce. Holy cow. The dim-witted thief, he also has a significant criminal history record, which I'm sure that surprises everybody, including convictions for felony, drug, and firearm possession. And if I had to guess, it probably involves meth. And what you don't know, Seamus, is we have one rule here on Game of Crimes, and that's kids don't do meth. So,
as I say, hugs are much better than drugs.
There you go, brother. I like it. So thank you for playing along with that, Seamus. I really do appreciate that. It gets it off to kind of a lighthearted start here. But just quickly, I want to tell our listeners how I met Seamus here. You guys have heard me talk about Patrick O'Donnell. We call him Sarge. He's a retired Milwaukee police officer, has his own podcast called Cops and Writers. And we introduce guests to each other. We share guests on our podcast, and that's how I met Seamus here. And I gotta read this one statement that Patrick put in his email when he first introduced us. He says, so O'Donnell, Murphy, and McElearney walk into an Irish bar. Only good things are going to come from this. So Patrick, thank you, brother. And Seamus, if you would, just tell us a little bit about your background. Were you born in Ireland, where you grew up, what your mom and dad did, that kind of thing, going to school, college, sports?
Sure. So as you had said there before, my parents came over in the 60s. They met in the Bronx. My dad was, I think, 20. My mom was 17. They met at a place called, they met right next to Manhattan College. There was an Irish sports facility there called Gaelic Park. And they used to have Irish types of dances every Friday night there. And that's where they actually met. And, they quickly developed a relationship. And I was actually born in New York City. I was raised in the Bronx. The area was called Bainbridge Avenue, 207th Street. So that's where I kind of had grown up there, went to school there. St. Brendan's was the name of the church because that's how we kind of relate to things back then as to what church you were from. And it was great because from what I recall, you would go home, you would do your homework, and then you would run across the street to play in the park, play sports. And where we lived was like a ground floor apartment. And I went by there about a year or so ago, and now that ground floor apartment is a bodega. My bedroom is probably like the frozen food section. And back then, we had a place where you could actually play sports right next to the apartment building. And we would play sports. We would play off the point with like a Spalding, and the cars and buses would actually stop. I don't think that would happen nowadays, but they would actually stop, and you would be playing in the middle of a main street. Like Bainbridge Avenue was a busy street. So it was great to play sports there. But as you start to grow older, things happen really, really fast in the sense is I saw friends get stabbed. I saw friends get shot and killed. Friends commit suicide, unfortunately, and die. So things happen really, really quickly. As I said, my parents came here and they didn't go to high school or to college. So all they kind of really taught you was to study hard, right? They couldn't help you with your homework or your math. So they just constantly told you to study hard. So I grew up there. And then my dad had a gas station. So when we started to go to high school, my parents decided to move to Westchester. And I had to make a choice. Would I was going to start to switch high schools? Would I stay in the Bronx, or would I move up to Westchester and go to high school up there? And all my friends had stayed in the Bronx, and the high school I went to was called Cardinal Spellman. So I decided to actually stay with my friends, but it was going to be a hike. So I would drive down with my dad in the morning because he had a gas station in the Bronx. And then I would take a bus over to Bainbridge Avenue and get on a bus there. It probably took me about an hour just to get to school in the morning. Coming back, it took me about an hour and a half to get home because I had to take like 2 buses, and then I'd have to walk in from a place called Central Avenue and then walk about a half an hour from there. So it took me about an hour and a half to get home. Wow. So because of that, I kind of gave up all my sports when I went to high school. But I would never stop that at all. And just to kind of put it into context, Cardinal Spellman was a co-ed school in the Bronx, and it was very close to Mount St. Michael. And Mount St. Michael has been in the news recently because of Sean Combs. Sean Combs went to Mount St. Michael, and there's a whole thing about him now because he's in jail. But I almost went to Mount.
Listeners might recognize P. Diddy.
Exactly. So I almost went to Mount, but the difference between Mount and Spellman was co-ed. Mount is all boys, and I wasn't going to go to an all boys school. So that's why I actually went to Spellman. So after I went to Spellman, then I went to a place for college. I went to Iona, and after there, then I got into banking. Well, even before that, what happened was my dad had helped me with college, where I didn't have any like student loans. So after I had finished college, I decided to pay him back, and I actually worked for him for close to 2 years. And to be honest, when I got out of college, I really didn't know what I had wanted to do. So I worked for him for about 2 years to kind of pay him back, and then I actually got into banking. And it's funny because the first job I got was in audit, and I went through the process because a friend had referred me for a job. And when I got to the director of that position, the gentleman who I was going to interview with actually worked for my father at the gas station. So needless to say, I got that job, right?
Wow.
But it's such a small world. So I worked there for a couple of years, and I worked at an insurance company called AIG. And I was working behind a desk and just really didn't have a passion for it. And then suddenly I actually met an agent that worked for the FBI. And just hearing the stories behind that, and like just the job itself, where you could like interview a CEO, you could be doing surveillance, you could be doing an arrest. Just every day just seemed to be a different day. So that just excited me, and I just had a passion to do that. And back then, it was in like 1996 or so. As you know, there was a freeze with trying to hire people. So I applied, and I was constantly told, you don't have any experience, you're not going to get hired. And I have a thought process in life, which has always been persistence beats resistance. So I was just determined to apply then. And at that point in time, I was told just in New York, there was like 100,000 people just applying in New York. Compared to nowadays, it's like, because of all the bad press the Bureau has gotten the last couple of years, there's not as many people as applying now. But I applied, and, I didn't know what the chances were. And I was being told back then there was only like a 2% chance that I would be, chosen. So I'm not saying that I'm an angel, but I do have the mindset of a perp. And I think that helped me just because of the way that I actually was raised. So I was selected, and it was great. And that was in February of 1998. I got to go down to Virginia to train. And right before I actually went down there, I actually had hurt my knee, where, stupid me, I actually, my kneecap used to pop out, and I would actually physically move my kneecap back into its socket, and you would hear the bone going back against the bone. And I should have really had taken care of that years ago, but I didn't. And I didn't know, because I was young, right? At that point, I was close to 30, and I didn't know if I told them about it, if they would just say, okay, next, right? So I was like, all right, I have to go down there because this might be my only shot. So I decided to go down there, and sure enough, when you go down to Virginia, and at that time too, the DEA trained with us. You didn't have your own facility then. I think now your facility is right next door to ours, but at that point in time, you guys did train next to us, right? So I went down there, and when you go in there, there's two types of instructors that you have. You have one that likes to run, and one that likes to fight.
Yep.
So I personally like to fight as opposed to run. When I walked into the gym, and you get your the fitness instructor that you're told you're going to have, I look around and I see a big guy there. I'm like, okay, please be my fitness instructor. And then I look around again, and I see a guy who's like 5'3", 120 pounds soaking wet. And sure enough, he's our fitness instructor. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have a problem. And all he did was want to run and run and run. So when we ran and we had our fit test, my knee popped out. I was like, oh, geez. So they were going to send me home. And I was just determined. I said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll go to PT. And as you know yourself, when you go through training, you don't have a lot of free time. So here I am, my knee is absolutely killing me. This guy wants to run all the time. And I actually did it. I went to PT. I wrapped my knee every day. I took Advil out the wazoo, and I stayed there. And I think they liked that I was just my steely resolve, that I was not going, like I planned on staying. So I was able to stay there, and I excelled in studying my test. I actually could box. So that helped me a lot. And I graduated on time with my class. And then just to fast forward years later, in 2018, I'm going up my stairs, and my MCL snapped.
Oh.
And it was so weird, right? So I go to the doctor, and I have the procedure to fix it. And he goes, did you hurt your knee when you were younger? And I was like, yeah. He goes, you tore your ACL back then.
Man.
And you never got it fixed. So my knee popping out all the time was my ACL had torn. So just think about that. I went through training with a torn ACL, which is nuts to even think about it when you think about the players that play football now that they're out the entire year. So when I had the procedure done in 2018, it literally took me about a year for my knee to feel right again. But just to go back in time. So I graduated in May, and during the FBI process, when you're there for about 7 or 8 weeks, they like to play around with you a little bit, where they determine where they're going to send you. And before you even go down there, they tell you if you're from New York, there's like a 99% chance you're going to be sent back here because the cost of living is so high and because no one wants to come back to New York, right? So I was of the mindset, if they send me anywhere else, I'm going to be surprised. So we had probably like 7 or 8 New Yorkers from our class. And I was like thinking, and my last name starts with M, everyone from New York was getting it. And I was starting to think, oh my God, am I not going to get it? Right. So thankfully I got chosen to go back to New York. I think our class started with 50 people and we ended with 37 because you lose people as you start to go through the training.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we started with 50 and we lost 5 or 6, but wow, that's a lot. 13 people.
Yep. So, and then I got sent back to New York. And when you go to New York, there's a rotation that they put you through. You go to the operations center. They go to the applicant squad, which is funny because when you're going through the process with the FBI, they actually come to your job, right? Which is kind of scary because your job could say, oh, you could leave today, right? You might lose your job. But thankfully, I had told them about the process that I was trying to get into. And at that point, I was working for a French bank called Credit Agricole, and they actually were really good about it. So I got out of there and I got sent to New York. And as I said, I go through this whole process and I get to do surveillance. When I get assigned to a squad called SO2, led by a team leader named Joe Sconzo. And they were investigating the DeCavalcanti family. So they were telling me that they had a proactive witness, a guy named, they didn't even tell me who the guy's name was, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the New York office was investigating the Jersey family, which, again, I'm new, so I really don't know how this is all starting to play itself out. So it's great that I'm assigned to that squad. And then just thinking about the book and everything, if you want me to rewind, how this case starts is in 1998, right before I go to training, 2 events happen. In January, I think January 14th, 3 people robbed the World Trade Center. And what they do is they do rob the World Trade Center. There's a bank in there and they come out, but they take their mask off. Very stupid. They didn't think there was any CCTV cameras there, and they're caught pretty quickly. 2 people are caught, I think, that day. The third person goes to New Mexico, and he's caught within like three or four days there. The mastermind behind that is a guy named Ralph Guarino. Ralph Guarino was smart enough to know that, hey, the walls are starting to cave in. He makes a phone call to a legendary agent named George Hanna. And I don't want to give the details away as why George is a legend himself. You can read the book about that. But George is smart enough to know he's a New York guy from Brooklyn. He decides to turn Ralph into a proactive witness. What I mean by that is a witness who's going to stay on the street and make consensual recordings. And that's the best type of evidence that you can actually have. So that's the first act that starts this. The second event that happens is January 23rd, there's a murder of a guy named Joseph Canigliaro. Joseph Canigliaro was a DeCavalcanti associate who was confined to a wheelchair. And you're probably thinking, oh my God, that sounds really bad. The backstory behind that is in the 1970s, Joseph Canigliaro and a DeCavalcanti soldier named James Gallo go to collect loan shark money from a guy they had loaned money to. But James Gallo accidentally shoots Joseph Canigliaro when they're going to collect the money. No harm, no foul, just the cost of doing their type of business that they have. So Joseph Canigliaro was confined to a wheelchair from like 1970s until his death in 1998. The reason that he was killed was he tortured his crew. Even though he was confined to a wheelchair, he was a ruthless person. To give you an example, what he used to do is he would call you over and he would shoot you and kill you and then have his crew clean you up, put you in a tarp or a rug and just dispose of the body. So he was such a ruthless guy. He was shaking down his own crew. So they had just about had it with him and they wanted to kill him. So they did kill him. So they killed him. I think it was January 23rd from what I can recall. So those are the 2 events that start this case. Now, when you have a proactive witness, you never know where he's going to go. And because you're probably thinking, how does the New York FBI take down the Jersey family? And that's what happens is Ralph is a proactive witness and you never know where he's going to go. And George kind of directs him through the different families. And he led us to the Brooklyn faction of the DeCavalcanti family, which we really did not know about. And as I said, the stars just were aligned for me because as I'm going through that rotation, that surveillance team was tracking Ralph. So then when I'm on that surveillance team, then, you're trying to make sure you have a great reputation because in law enforcement, the only thing is you have is your reputation.
Exactly.
So I'm going around trying to work late shifts, work wires, sign myself up for an arrest. And when I went through training, organized crime just, appealed to me because they are into everything. They're not just into drugs. They're not just into white collar. Wherever they can make money, they're going to try to make money. So during that time period, when I'm going through that rotation, I'm going to organized crime supervisors. I'm going to bosses, trying to ingratiate myself to them that they might draft me or select me to go to a squad. And then sure enough, in December of 1998, I get selected to go to a squad called C10. And C10 was responsible for the Bonanno family. And also they were responsible for this investigation, which was targeting the DeCavalcanti family.
And if you would, so you said the DeCavalcantis are the sixth family. What are the other five families?
Okay, so you have the Bonanno family, the Genovese family, the Lucchese family, the Gambino family. How many did I just name there?
4, and then the Colombos, I believe.
And the Colombo. How can I forget the Colombos? Because that's the family that I went to go supervise after.
Yeah.
So those are the 5 families.
Yeah, I want to back up. Just when you said you were going into the academy, that your personality was more like a criminal. Why do you say that?
Just because of where I was raised, and I just saw a lot of things. And I was smart enough. As I said, I'm not an angel, but I was smart enough. I never got caught. And my friends always used to say that I had the most common sense. So I saw a lot in my life. I saw a lot of bad things happen, but I was always smart enough not to get involved in things. And as where I grew up, you had to make a choice, right? You could go the right path or you could go the wrong path. A lot of my friends did go the right path. And it's like from where we did grow up, it's like people are surprised that a lot of my friends became so successful.
Right. Good stuff. So you're in C10 back in the academy. Other than having your knee injury, when I went through in '87, and we were there at the FBI Academy. Spent 3 months there up in Jefferson Hall. Place was packed. We had 5 DEA classes, 5 FBI classes, and a National Academy class. It was all there at the same time. It wasn't an open bed in the whole place. But did you ever have to write any memos for anything that questionable that you might have done while you were in the academy?
No, the only thing that I had to write up was when I actually got hurt, that I was determined to stay there. You know what I mean?
Wow. So you were a good student. Yeah.
But the thing that was kind of odd though, right, was when I had left my job. So back then you didn't have it was beepers and everything. But I remember I was going through the academy. It was the first week of February, I believe. And I was waiting for my bonus to hit from my old job. And my bonus hit that Saturday, and I was going to Quantico that weekend.
Wow.
So I had to call my job that Monday and let them know that I've resigned, which is very stressful because here I am. I was never in the service before, right? So this is all new to me, right? I go down to Virginia. I'm going to be sharing a suite really with 4 people. For some reason, they don't like New Yorkers to begin with, right? As you said earlier, maybe because of the way that we talk. But so it was a very stressful time for me. And then here I am the first day. I got to get a break to actually call my job to let them know that I'm resigning like right now, because the bonus is something that I had earned and I wasn't going to give that up because I took a really significant pay cut from, I think it was close to $50,000. And this is back in 1998.
Yeah.
So, and again, you don't do this job because of the money. You do it because of the purpose, right? You know, because of the mission. But that was a significant pay cut that I was going to take. And I needed the bonus to get by, really. But that was the only thing that was really kind of stressful for me. But as far as a student, I actually was fine.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned that the Cavalcantes are based in Jersey, right?
Yes.
And I know the DEA offices at New York and the Newark offices, and there's always a competition going on there because they cross the border. And we had the same thing in Miami between us and Fort Lauderdale. And typically what happens is the worker bees get to be friends, and we don't worry about it. It's the bosses that worry about, oh, you came into our territory without calling us first. But one thing, and I read in your book, is that you guys offered the olive branch out to Jersey to join the investigation, and they turned you down. How can they do that?
Yeah. And I don't get too much into it within the book, as you saw that, right? And it's like, and I don't want to really get too much into it, but because back then I was very young, so I'm not going to get involved with the meetings that they had. All that I know is what was actually that did take place. So the leadership, I would say, at that particular time, right, that headed the OC squads there, is we offered to work with them, and for some reason they decided not to. My opinion, short-sighted, because as we'll talk about, we had the witnesses. So why wouldn't you want to work with us? So it was very short-sighted on their part. But, you know, when we did have arrests, which we'll talk about as well, of course, you're going to let them know that we're going to go into the district there. And they did partake with us, and they did help us with the arrest. It's just the right thing to do. But the overall investigation, they should have worked with us. But the leadership at that particular time, you know, years later, everything was fine. But the leadership during that time period decided not to work with us, which was very short-sighted.
It was the same with us. Quite honestly, it's egos.
Exactly. Exactly.
It was for us anyway, but that's another thing. And one other question I want to ask you about from your book, and I think I remember this, but I wasn't sure. You make mention of a part-time FBI agent. What is that? How do you be a part-time FBI agent?
Okay, so what the agency does allow you to do is, if, you know, say that there's a female who's got childcare issues, it's like they allow them to work part-time. Right. And there's a place for everyone within the Bureau. But when you have an investigative squad, it's very hard to be on an investigative squad and be a part-time agent. In our case, though, there was a female agent. Her name was Eileen O'Rourke, who had, I think, like 5 kids. She worked part-time, but she was absolutely amazing. It's like she was a great investigator. And even though she was designated part-time, she really was a full-time agent because she worked so much. So she really shouldn't be designated as a part-time agent. She should have been a full-time agent. But there was a time period, because she was trying to take care of her kids, where she was designated as a part-time agent. And this is something that we'll start to get into too. But the ladies from C10 that worked on that squad, they were the hardest working women that I ever worked with in my entire life. Even my partner, it's like I trusted her to go through doors. It was just amazing. And then years later, there's some females that I worked with that couldn't hold a candle to these females. So, but the Bureau does allow part-time agents just because of like childcare issues and things like that. It's at a reduced type of salary as well, though.
Do they maintain benefits?
Yes, they do, but I don't think you get paid a full salary. Like you know how we get the ABP, the additional salary. I'm not too sure if they get that or not.
Yeah, we call it availability pay. Or
yes, exactly.
AUO was the fish. I can't remember what their name stands for now. But now, so back to the investigation. You guys are getting ready to make some arrests, and you get to participate in that, and that's where we're going next. Right.
So I get to the squad in December of 1998, and the squad is rocking. In the sense is that we have the Bonanno team, and then we have the Cavalcanti team, and I get assigned to the Cavalcanti side. And when you have a proactive witness, there's so much work involved in that, right? The first main thing is keeping the guy safe, right? And giving the appearance up that he's a perp, right? Where he can't not do certain things. So you have to get authority to do some sort of criminal acts like gambling and things like that. So you're constantly, that's George's main responsibility. Keep the guy sane, right? And make sure that he's not going to cross the line, make sure that his mental health is fine as well. And I'm a new agent. So I'm like a sponge. I get attached to George. He's my type of mentor that I wanted. Just learn as much as I possibly could from him. So for that year, I'm doing as much as I can. I do admin work, whatever he wanted me to do, right? Get funds for the guy, whatever he wanted. And it's like, I'm learning so much. And it's like, even when you're doing the crap work, you're learning so much because you're looking at the surveillance logs. And like I said, I was privy to be on that surveillance team. So I had a leg up already. So, and the best thing for trial is when you have a consensual recording, a surveillance, a photo, and then a live voice. It's like, it's hard to dispute that. So during that year, I'm doing all this work, right? And I'm trying to learn as much as I possibly can. And then, which we'll get to too, then we have our first arrest, which is in December of 1999. And as a new agent, I'm hoping to be on an arrest, right? Second of all, I'm thinking, okay, I'll be rear security, right, for my own protection because you're brand new, right?
Right.
And then we arrested 39 people that day. And I get tasked with being the team leader. So I'm actually shocked about that. Second of all, during that time period, my dad gets sick. So he's got cancer on the brain. And December of 1999, the first arrest is December 2nd. I get tasked with arresting Anthony Capo. He's a violent DeCavalcante soldier. Now, granted, I had watched George and how he operated Ralph that year, and he always treated Ralph with respect, regardless of who he was. And I come from the mindset is you always get more bees with honey, right? So Anthony was a violent person, hated by law enforcement, even hated by some people within the mob. Every interaction I heard with him and law enforcement was really bad, hostile. But I said, I'm not going to treat him that way, right? And it's like, what it is with organized crime is you always want to try to flip the guy because you don't know what he knows, right? And you're always trying to build the next block. So I get tasked to arrest him. I studied him like you would study for a test. I knew everything about him. I knew everything about the charges that he had against him. I knew everything about his family. I knew everything about his health. He was a diabetic. So I was very prepared. So when I went to go arrest him, right, you do all this planning, you see where he lives, everything. We go arrest him and he's not there. We knock on his door, we speak to his wife, and she's like, he's at his mom's house. So all that planning that you did goes right out the window.
Of course
also,
it does.
Also at that time in New York, there's two types of districts. There's the Southern District and the Eastern District, right? And as you mentioned before, Judge Sterling Johnson was in the Eastern District. So there's two districts. But there was charges from both districts against Anthony Capo, and it was kind of like a race to arrest him. So there was some conflict between the districts, as you mentioned before. Sometimes there's conflicts between the agencies that we have. Oh, yeah. So to appease, to keep the peace, I invited some people from the Eastern District, that team, to be on the arrest, just to keep everything calm. So they're on the arrest team with us. And as I said, we go arrest him. He's not there. We go to his mom's house. And he had been doing a lot of drugs at that particular point in time. And this violent, hostile person that I had heard about, when I went to go arrest him, I didn't see that. I seen a very loving relationship between him and his family. So it kind of threw me off for a moment there, right? So I get him ready. He comes out and he's wearing a Dallas Cowboy jacket. I'm a Steelers fan, so I hate the Cowboys, right? So I'm like, oh, this is going to be great.
Wait a minute. What about the Giants?
Well, when I was young, the Steelers were good, and I stayed with them.
Oh, okay.
I'm a loyal person. So,
okay.
So he comes out with that, and I'm like, oh, this is great. So I get him in the car. I read him his rights, and he invokes his right to remain silent for his lawyer. So I was like, great. So now I'm like, all right, let the mind games begin. And I start to play with him a little bit. As I said, I knew the charges that he had against him. At that point in time, he had a conspiracy to murder charge, this guy named Charlie Majuri, who was an acting panel boss on the DeCavalcante panel at the point in time. And he had a mail fraud charge. So I played with him a little bit, just played a little like mind chess with him, where I said, okay, your plan was to knock on Charlie's door and shoot him in the face. The reason that you guys didn't do that is because there was a cop that was on the block, which was all true. And we all know you don't lie to these guys. If you lie to them, you're done. And we've already gotten that from the consensual recordings that I had listened to before. So you got to put yourself in his shoes. At 6 o'clock in the morning, he doesn't know who the witness is at this point in time. He doesn't know where I'm getting this information from. He knows it's fact, right? So, and I just tell him, don't say anything, just listen to me, because as I said, you can't question him now because you've already invoked his right to counsel. So then I start to play with him related to the stock fraud charge, like the mail fraud charge. And remember back in the day, you would rent a suite, which was like a mailbox. And you would think that, okay, you had this nice building. So I said, oh, that was really cute. And then I would let him think. And then I would speak to the driver, who was my classmate from school, Brian Itzgetson. So just to give him like food for thought, right? And then he saw that I had orange juice with me in case his blood sugar dropped. And then I would start to ask him questions like, what's your wife's name, what date of birth? And before he answered, I would give him the answer. So just letting him know that I knew a lot more than he thought I knew. So then throughout the ride, right, he just threw out a little thing to us. He goes, we knew you were coming. Because when I called it in that we had him safely, I was being told that a lot of people were not at their homes. So he had heard that, and he just said, we knew you were coming. So we were like, we might have a problem here. And you'll see where I'm going soon. So I'm like, okay. So we spent the whole day together. I had to meet his stepfather and give him money. So he had heard that I treated him with respect. I should go through pretrial. He hadn't been locked up in a while, so I explained the whole thing to him. I just told him, be careful what you say because people might think that you're speaking to me, because he started to become friendly with me throughout the day. And I said, don't give the appearance that we're friends, right? Because that's going to get you in trouble. And I explained how pretrial works, how I say, I'm not going to see that report. That's your ticket to try to get bail. So if there's assets that you have to tell them that. And then sure enough, he didn't get bail because he was very violent, during this time that he was on probation before. And about a week later, I get a phone call from his lawyer. And his lawyer says he wants to play ball. And I was totally shocked. It was a Thursday night. And, I got off the phone. I spoke to the attorney real quick, and she was a very seasoned person, Maria Barton. And she was very concerned, like, what did I say? Right? And I said, easy. Less is more. I didn't say too much at all. I'm smart enough to say that. And I said, I would call you. Right. So, and then it started the proffer process. And that's something that within the book that I try to do is I try to explain a lot of things, what a proffer is, cooperation, woodseck, certain crimes like loan sharking. I try to go into detail as all this works, trials, which we'll talk about too. There's lots of trials here. And we kind of start the process that he wants to play ball. Unbeknownst to me, because I'm brand new, I have about a year on the job now, is that no one in that family, no made member in that family had ever cooperated before in their 100-year history. So he's the first guy.
Wow.
So he comes in and he proffers. And what a proffer is you come in and you have to be truthful. And you have to tell us all your crimes. And now the beauty of the mob is they don't do crimes alone, right? They do crimes with everybody else. There's always a group of them. So when he comes in, the first 3 things he tells us, and time is of the essence, right? It's like you can't be away from prison for a long time because the bad guys are going to know.
Right.
So when you come in, it's like you can't be half pregnant. You have to basically tell us the goods. Which he did. He came in, he was ready, he was prepped, and he told us 3 things. A, we had a leak that someone in the Southern District fed them the information that there was going to be an indictment. Thankfully that we took Ralph off the street when we did, because he could have gotten hurt. Second of all, he tells us about a murder of this guy named Fred Weiss. Fred Weiss was a Jewish businessman from Staten Island who was killed on 9/11, horrible day, 1989. And the reason that he was killed is because he got involved with John Gotti from the Gambino family. And John Gotti was paranoid. John Gotti thought he was cooperating. The reason that he thought he was cooperating was because Fred Weiss, who was arrested in June of 89, switched lawyers. That's the only reason why he thought he was cooperating. So this man got killed for nothing.
Yeah.
Horrible. Now that murder, years later, becomes probably the most indictable mob murder ever, where at least 15 people from two different families, the Gambinos and the DeCavalcantis, have either pled guilty or were convicted of that murder. Wow. Unbelievable. So Fred Weiss should have never gotten involved with John Gotti, and John Gotti should have never gotten involved with Fred Weiss. So that's the second thing he tells us. And the third thing he tells us is that he's the shooter in a guy named John D'Amato. And that happened in 1991, and John D'Amato was the acting underboss at that time. The reason John D'Amato was killed was because John D'Amato's girlfriend comes to Anthony Capo and tells him that John D'Amato is taking her to sex clubs in New York City and that he's having sex with men. Now, I'm not judging. I don't care. But Anthony says that we cannot have a leader having sex with men. And he reports that to his superiors. And again, keep this in mind, this is back in 1991. So he brings it to his superiors, Vincent Palermo, acting panel boss, Anthony Rotundo is a captain, and they decide that he's got to go. Now you speak to Anthony Rotundo, who is a captain, and he becomes a witness later too. We'll get to that. He says that John D'Amato has a bad gambling problem. He's borrowing money against the family, and that's another reason why he has to go. Anyway, Anthony Capo is the shooter, and he kills him. In the Fred Weiss murder, Anthony Capo is the driver. So we go from Anthony Capo being charged with mail fraud and a conspiracy to murder, right, to now him exposing himself to a life sentence.
Right.
So we have to huddle real quickly and decide, is he telling us the truth? We decide he's telling us the truth because he just exposed himself to a life sentence. Also, when I'm in a room, it's my first real proffer with a May guy. I'm with George Hanna, legendary agent, as we discussed, and also a guy named Kenny McCabe, legendary Southern District investigator. So again, less is more. I don't want to say anything stupid. I'm letting them lead. I'm just giving the example of what you learn through training about a proffer, right? And we give that example about the bank robbery, right? Where if you come in and you don't lie to us, everything's fine. But if you do lie to us and you say it's a bank robbery, that doesn't stop me from going to the bank and retrieving the video, and I could charge you with that, right? As long as you don't lie to us. And that's the whole thing. It's called Queen for a Day, right? Where you, as long as you tell us the truth, you're protected. So we decide he's telling us the truth. And again, now we're in like December 10th, 11th or so. Because he tells us these three things, and he tells us that there are bodies buried, not that he put them there, but there's bodies buried up in a recycling plant in Marlboro, New York, Phil Lamella's place. Phil Lamella is a DeCavalcanti soldier. When you have a body buried and someone tells you about this, you have to act immediately because fear of the bodies being moved.
Right.
So this is December. It's cold. Ground is hard. So I've been very successful in my career where I found 5 body recoveries throughout my career. Here we go up and we go to Marlboro, New York, and it's like a football field, this guy's place. Secondary is the building has since changed since when they were killed in 1991. So that's a wrinkle, right? So we go up there and we dig for like 3 days. I remember I had to go up to Albany to the Northern District of New York to get a search warrant. And we dig for 3 days. We found like bullet shells. We didn't find the bodies that are supposed to be there. That night, I remember going back to my dad. My dad's in hospice care then at that point in time. I go and I see him that night because he's at his end. And my mom, very religious person, that night, me and my brother are starting to get ready to go home. And she goes, "You guys should stay." Thankfully, we did because that's when he passed. So very, very strange. All this is happening at the same time. I'm dealing with Anthony Capo. I'm flipping him. My dad is passing away. And we we have the wake, and this is like December 17th is when he passed. And then you have the wake and the funeral. So strange is I'm at the funeral home, and Anthony Capo calls me when I'm at the funeral home to offer his he wants to say sorry to me. He offers his condolences to me. So we're there, and I'm just thinking to myself, here I am 3 days ago looking for bodies, people that you killed and put there, and here I am with my dad. Just really, really strange. So anyway, we get through that, and then we start the process again, where we start to proffer him again. And just to kind of fast forward a little bit, he's in the door now. The guys are starting to realize that we've moved him, right? So whenever you move someone, the bad guys kind of know, okay, he's no longer in the prison system. He's at another facility. He has to be talking to the feds. So at that point in time, he reported to Vincent Palermo. And Vincent Palermo was the acting boss of the DeCavalcanti family. He reported to Vincent Palermo because Anthony was so hard to control. He was a very violent person. So Vincent Palermo, he's got to make a decision. He has done a lot of violent acts with Anthony Capo. He was part of the Fred Weiss murder, where he was the shooter, actually. And on the John D'Amato murder, he actually gave permission for Anthony to kill him. So he's in the soup here. He's got to make a decision. Vinny's a businessman. And we'll get into the similarities of the show, Sopranos, and real life later. But Vinny has a strip club. And we'll get into that later. But at that point in time, Vinny's got to make a decision. What is he going to do? So Vinny decides to cooperate in March of 2000. So now we go from having nobody to having a soldier and an acting boss cooperate.
Wow.
A month later, Victor Di Chiara, who's an associate, he decides to cooperate. So now we have 3 people, and we do the same thing with them. We go through the proffer process, and then what happens is you proffer in hopes of getting a cooperation agreement. And then we get them to all lock in to actually, and when you get a cooperation agreement, you have to plead to all your crimes, right? And expose them to life sentences. And we take all their information, and then we have a superseding indictment. And that superseding indictment happens in October 2000. And that's known as the hierarchy indictment, where we arrest the official boss, John Riggi, who's in jail, the consigliere, the bunch of captains, and a bunch of soldiers. So that's a very significant arrest. We're just past the 25th anniversary of that. So huge arrest for us, right? And from there, things get very real very, very quickly, because there's an associate that comes forward.
Yeah, and not that I want to jump ahead here, but I have watched most of the Sopranos series, and I remember the one guy that was killed because he was having sex with other men, and I remember the main bad guy ran the strip club.
Yep. So there's a lot of similarities between the show and real life. For instance, within the show, the first season, there is the boss at the time dies of stomach cancer. In real life, Jake Amari dies of stomach cancer in June of 1997. So that's right from the get-go. Then, as you said, you have the gay angle. You have the strip club, where the strip club is in New Jersey. It's really in Queens. Then there's a meat market that they go to. I don't want to say the name of the meat market on the show, but there's a meat market that is in New Jersey that they go to all the time. There's the stock angle. So in the DeCavalcanti family, there's a DeCavalcanti captain at that time named Philip Brahma, who is known as the Wizard of Wall Street. Made a ton of money, very smart man, made a lot of money with the DeCavalcanti family. That's part of the show. One of the things that we'll talk about too is Ralph made a consensual recording in March of 1999, where Ralph is in a car with a bunch of DeCavalcanti members. Now, keep in mind, the show started in January of 1999. We have on tape them discussing the show and saying, that's you, that's you, that's you. Okay. That was priceless for trial. All you had to do was hit play.
Oh, man. The jury's eating that up.
Oh, and even, we'll get to it later, but even during the trials, Judge McCasey, who became the AG later, he had to give instructions to the juries to make sure they wouldn't be tainted because of the show, that they could actually give a fair assessment of the trial. So this is all part of the transcripts.
Well, when they were making that show, was anybody a consultant to the producers?
Not from the FBI side. And even though the director says no on their side, it's just, there's so many similarities between both of them. And it's really hard to say that they weren't. Another big thing within the show, which is in real life, is the union angle, right? You constantly see that throughout the show. In real life, the DeCavalcantes, they controlled Local 394, which was the labor union. And they also started a union, Local 1030, which was the asbestos union. So those are two unions that they actually controlled. Anthony, who we would talk about, he testified 7 times for me. And he talks about how the asbestos union, he had a license where he talks about it during the trial, where it's in a transcript. He goes, I wouldn't know asbestos even if I sat on it. So, and he had someone else take the test for him. But there's so many similarities between the show and real life. It's crazy. So even though they say no one has spoken to them, it's just very odd.
Very suspect.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know in your book you talk about them where they have jobs that they get paid for a job that there really is no job. And you remember in the show Sopranos where they're sitting out there in their chairs and they got their little sun dishes, getting a suntan. So
there's the no-show job, right, where you get paid and you don't have to show up. There's the no work job where you go and you don't have to work at all. And what they're doing is they're robbing the pension types of the benefits related to it. Back then, in the old days, there was a thing called shaping up. What that meant was that you would actually go down to the hall and wait in line. And hopefully you would be selected that day to a job. The DeCavalcantes, and you would go down there like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and wait. DeCavalcantes, the members, they would just show up whenever they wanted to, and they would go get a job. So frustrating to say the least.
Without going into a lot of detail, because we're going to take a break here in just a minute, but so Capo is in prison, I guess like a WITSEC.
Right. So there are 7 different facilities throughout the states. And what happens is you can't say where they are, but they're attached to other facilities. And the people that are in those facilities, they don't have anything to prove. So they're with people that are in the same boat as them. So it's not a violent type of process where you don't have to worry about getting jumped. It's like you're all just doing your time just to try to get out of there. And that's something that the public probably thinks that, all right, you go into the witness security program, you just get a brand new life. It's not like that. There's different processes through the WITSEC program as well. First of all, it's run by the Marshal Service, right? You go through jail first. And then at some point, you're going to hopefully get bail, right? And when you get bail, you have to make a decision. Do you want to go into phase 2 of the program? And what that means is getting the new identity from the marshals, where they'll give you a new social security number, a license, and all that. And which I used to always tell the guys, because I put a lot of people through that program, is your marshal is your new best friend.
Yeah.
No matter if you hate him, he's your new best friend because he controls everything. He or she controls everything. So, and you're not like you get everything at once either. You might get your license first. It could take you 6 months before you get your social security number. It takes time. And you never leave the program until you have all your identification. That's another thing I tell people. Don't leave the program until you have all your ID. The second option is you can just sign out of the program and have your old name still. So if you have a common name like Bob Smith, no one's going to really know you, right? But if you have a name like Schifoletti or something like that, it's kind of hard to not be known. So those are the options. But I think the public generally just thinks, okay, you go into the program and you're free. It's like, no, you go to jail. And there's different, like I've had guys go to jail for 10 years. I've had guys to go to jail for 4 years.
Yeah. And the point I'm getting to here is they could be anywhere in the country, but you're still trying to run them. And so, I mean, that's a full-time job just trying to keep up with that one witness.
Right. And when they're in jail, it's easy that way, right? Because you know where they are and you can actually go see them, right? When it comes time to say that you have a trial and they're out on bail, then it gets harder because you have to go through the marshals, right? So first of all, if a witness is out on bail, or even if he's in jail, right? It's like if they call me, certain number is going to pop up on my phone and I'm going to know it's them, right? I don't know it's a particular witness. I just know it's a witness, right? But if I have to go see them and prep for trial, then it becomes harder. Not harder for me, harder for them and the marshals. And what I mean by that is, okay, for argument's sake, say that I have to go to Cleveland, right? Well, I'll go directly to Cleveland. They might be somewhere else. They're not taking a direct flight to Cleveland. They're going to do a couple of different loops just to wash themselves. So it becomes harder for them. So it's much more work intensive for the marshals. And what that is called, we call it a neutral site meeting. And again, I'm not supposed to know where they are. Now, Anthony was slick. Anthony would suddenly be, I'm a Lions fan, so I know where he is. I'm a Cowboy fan. I know. So he would, and I'd be like, okay, I get it. So he's just trying to be slick. But there's a certain set of numbers that would pop up on my phone. The marshals don't want me to say what it is, but I would know it's someone from the witness security program is trying to call me. And I just can't call him because I'm not supposed to know where he is. So if I want to schedule a call with him, I have to call the marshals and the marshals will actually call him and then they'll patch the call through.
Just a little side story. When I first graduated the academy, I hired on through the Charleston, West Virginia office. And I lived 100 miles away. So the boss there, and I was going to get transferred to Miami in just a couple of months. And he said, okay, come to the office once a week, give me a G car. He said, you've been a cop in the southern part of the state for 12 years. Go around to all the different counties, the sheriffs and the larger PDs, and which there weren't a lot of large PDs, and just figure out, talk to the narcotics investigators and all that. And so we came back and I was in the office one day and the resident agent in charge says, listen, I need you to run these names and we need to do some status updates on these individuals. So there's this one name. I must have run it through our NADIS system, which is the DEA Narcotics and Dangerous Drug Indexing System. I must have run it 6 times. And about within a day and a half, I'm getting a call from a member of the U.S. Marshal Service. Hey, why do you keep running this name? I explained it to him and he said, I highly suggest that you stop running that name. I'm like, wait a minute, you're the marshals, I'm DEA. I'm not going to do what you say. And he said, let me talk to your rack. So I went and got the boss, put him on the phone, and he's like, Murph, stop running that name. So it's kind of, I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree, but I kind of figured out what was going on there.
It's funny. It's like, even after I retired, certain jobs that I've had, when people have done a background on people, they've come to me and be like, oh, this is really, really, really odd. I'm like, I know what that is.
Let me educate you as much as I can, but not a whole lot.
Yep. I'm like, should we really hire that person?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the benefit of having you in that position, right?
Yep. Oh, it's true.
I mean, you're still in New York City, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's things that you learn over the past 20 plus years, they still come into play at times.
Exactly.
So we've been going pretty well over an hour here for now. What we'd like to do, everyone, is take a break for today. Seamus has agreed to come back and continue this story because we're not even halfway through here. The stuff, the book is, and let me give it to you the right way this time. It is Flipping Capo, C-A-P-O, How the FBI Dismantled the Real Sopranos. And I don't know if you're author or you came up with that name, but you talk about an attention grabber. When you throw the Sopranos in there, it's like Jerry Williams. I know that you were on Jerry's podcast here not long ago. She and I have become friends. And she explained how she named her podcast the FBI Case File Review. And she says just having that FBI in there is what she's got a very successful podcast. So yeah, kudos to whoever came up with the name. But everybody, thank you for joining us today. Please come back tomorrow because we're going to continue on with this. We're still talking about the DeCavalcante family. We haven't gotten into the Bonanos. We haven't gotten into the Columbos yet. We haven't got into the violent crime and the fraud investigations and all the other cool things that Seamus has been involved with. So I appreciate you guys. Until tomorrow, be safe. We'll see you then.